All right, so in today's video, I'm going to share with you a common problem that I just discovered with this optic that many of you are probably experiencing. Is causing you misses and you don't even know it. Let's go. Hey folks, Gary here with Paramount Tactical. So this is a client's rifle. He actually paid us to set up his entire rifle package. It's something that we do. We do a lot of, several of these rifles every single month, where not only are they buying the MPA rifle from us, the optic from us, but they actually have us assemble it and put it together in a nice, custom package with a custom case, all those things, right? So they can basically pull this gun out and go out and zero it and know it's good to go. When people pay us to set up their optics, we have a precision mounting service. Whether you buy the rifle from us or not, we do offer a precision mounting service. And when we provide that service, look, we take our time. I want to make sure I'm going to do exactly everything with this optic that is yours that I would do with mine to make sure that we get rid of all sorts of variables. Some clients just have us precision mount the optic. Some of them will actually pay us to do a tall target test and or even zero or a tracking test. We offer those services, but regardless, whatever service you pay us for, we're going to make sure that it's done right and take our time to do it correctly. So if any of you have watched my complete guide to precision optic mounting, you can go check that out there if you haven't seen it. One of the things I talk about is making sure that you're leveling the optic based on the optic body itself, right? We're not doing it off the reticle. And I get into a lot of discussions, debates, arguments, or whatever else, where people say, hey, I use a plumb line, I use a flashlight method, whatever else. They're using the reticle to determine what's plumb. And this optic is a perfect example of why we don't want to do that. So we took our time, precision mounted this optic, and you guys can see right now that we have, based on the SG pulse, this is perfectly level, the gun itself. And then on top of the turret, we have a level that I know is extremely good and extremely precise and accurate, and it indicates level. And I know some of you that haven't watched my full optic mounting video, well, Gary, a lot of times you can get a turret that isn't level. You're absolutely right, you can, but the way that we do this or get rid of that variable is we basically make sure that the top of the turret is parallel with the bottom of the turret housing. So essentially, I'm not mounting this based on how level the turret is. I'm mounting it based on the position of the bottom of the turret housing. That's what we want. And as outlined in that video, the way that I ensure that the bottom of the turret housing and the top of the turret are parallel is, number one, I have a piece of bar stock that I use. I make sure that that is perfectly level. And then we put this on it. We know that the bottom of this is flat. And then I take a reading from the top of the turret housing. If it's not level at the turret housing, I've never not been able to do this. You can actually turn the turret to a point to where you will find a place where the bottom of the turret housing and the turret itself are parallel. So we're ensuring that this optic is leveled based off the bottom of this turret housing. That's what we want. And that's exactly what we did with this optic. So we know that the body of the optic itself is currently level and parallel with the scope base, and that's what we want. Now, this is a Leupold Mark IV. It's not a cheap optic. It's not some off-brand optic. And this is just a classic example of what can happen, because this can happen even in higher end optics as well. But as I'm looking through this optic, and I know the gun is level, I know the optic is level, what I could see with my naked eye is that we have a reticle that is not plumb inside the optic. It was clearly canted to the point that I could see it with my naked eye. So then what I did to verify that is I threw a laser level up in the wall. It wasn't this wall. I have a cleaner wall back there, but I also got a bunch of junk. So for filming purposes and illustration purposes, we're doing it right here. I'm just showing you that I was using that. So I made sure that our SG pulse was on, and then I made sure the reticle was lined up with the laser level, so it's plumb. And because I was using the SG pulse, which gives you an angle indicator inside there, is I can tell you for certain that this reticle inside the optic is 1.3 degrees off of plumb from the body itself. That's a problem. But when I originally mounted this, if I used the reticle to determine what was plumb inside this optic, that defect, which is really what it is, would have been hidden. So because we used the scope body to level this optic and not the reticle, that allowed us to discover this defect. And what does that mean? Well, if we had used just the reticle, basically what we'd be dealing with is a 1.3 degree cant on the optic itself. So what that means is instead of the elevation, being able to drive the erector tube straight down or straight up, and the windage being able to drive that erector tube straight left or right, what we have is a slight 1.3 degrees of cant. So because of that defect, we're guaranteed to have tracking issues. And we wouldn't have discovered this if we would have used the reticle right off the bat. All right, and I know some of you out there are gonna say, well, 1 degree doesn't matter, half a degree doesn't matter, it's negligible. Well, folks, tolerances stack. And when you're down there shooting, especially if you're trying to shoot in a hurry, or if you're shooting in some sort of alternate position, off a barricade or whatever else, you are going to end up, your shot's not gonna be perfect. So with the amount of cant or other problems that you enter into the gun, plus what is already there mechanically, those things can result in misses. And that's what precision long range is all about, right? We're trying to mitigate the variables or reduce the variables to the point that hopefully we have none, so that we have a little bit of fudge room for when we make the mistakes, right? We can control this without a doubt. We can control everything on this gun, and that's what we're trying to do anytime that we're setting up our rifle. Get rid of these variables. There should be no questions left to ask by the time we get out and we start shooting at distance, collecting data, or going to a competition or whatever else. So the little things do matter, and they matter a lot. And you have the opportunity when you're setting up your rifle to get rid of those variables. That's what we want to do. Now, the other way that you could have diagnosed this problem is doing the thing that everybody should be doing every time you get a new optic, and that is make sure that at a minimum, you shoot a tall target test. I got a video right there that shows you how to do that. But shooting a tall target test at a minimum, if not doing a tall target test and a full-on tracking test to know exactly what is going on with your optic, if your tracking is accurate or not, whether it's shooting a little fat or a little skinny. The last thing that you want to do is get out to the range, you're looking at previous dope on that gun, or you're using a ballistic app, and your windage is always just a little off, your elevation is just always a little off, it's either high or slightly low because of that cant that we're getting out of that optic. And unfortunately, there's a lot of guys out there that have a canted reticle inside their optic because they mounted that optic using a plumb bob, using the flashlight method, and they're getting misses out at distance, and they're attributing those as environmental conditions or bad fundamentals or whatever else. And really what it is, it's a mechanical problem that you just didn't discover because of the way that you mounted your optic. That's what it comes down to. The other thing that I did notice with this optic is the entire reticle. As I'm looking through there, not only is it slightly canted to the left, but the left heavy steady lines on the horizontal bar, there's less of it. So it looks like the whole reticle is pushed over. And then the other thing that I noticed with this optic, as I'm looking through there, this has way too much parallax. So I think we have a defective optic. But I wouldn't have discovered any of these problems if I had used the reticle as the reference to which to mount this and to level this optic. And the reason I know that is because I did that, right? I discovered on one of my optics that, come to find out, the reticle inside was canted, and it was causing me a lot of problems, misses, and other things that I couldn't explain through ballistics, and just, bad fundamentals or whatever else. And ever since I had that issue, this is the way that I mount the scopes. And it's very obvious right off the bat. But regardless of what scope mounting method you use, because all scope mounting methods are susceptible to human error and mechanical error, when you mount the scope, the first should just be part of the process. You got to do at a minimum a tall target test to make sure that that reticle is tracking vertically and horizontally. And then you can take it one step further and do an actual tracking test to make sure that all tracking is very precise and it matches up with the indicators on your optic, whether using MOA or mil. Now here's the $1,000,000 question that many of you are asking. Well, Gary, if I discover that, what am I gonna do? Well, if it's me, I'm sending that optic back. I'm gonna let them know, hey, the reticle inside here is not correct. Please fix this or replace this optic. So that's really what you should do. If for some reason you don't want to do that, or that's not an option, what you can do is you can do a detailed tracking test. And then based on the results of that tracking test, you can figure out how your optics are actually tracking. And again, in the video, I show you how to do that. I show you how to plug that information into a ballistic application. Now you're gonna get the correct data that you need to make those hits first time, instead of miss, 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 and you're just dialing over. And that's one of the things that drives me a little crazy is people say, no, I know my optic is mounted correctly because I was hitting targets at 12, 13, 1400 yards. Okay, That doesn't mean anything because we can click our way over to a target, right? We can turn this thing 15 degrees and eventually there's enough elevation and windage in here that I'll probably hit the target. So getting an eventual hit at distance is not proof of anything. Make sure you're doing that tall target test, or really what you should be doing is an entire tracking test so you know exactly what's going on with your optic. And if you discover a defect, man, I as much as we often spend on these optics, now it is rare for a higher end optic like Leupold, Night Force, Zero Compromise to have this problem. I see this more often in some of the more budget options out there. But if it does happen, hold them accountable and check out that warranty, right? Let's see how that works now. That's exactly what we're going to do with this Leupold Mark IV. We're going to send this back to Leupold and make sure that we get the customer a proper working and quality controlled optic. That's what we're going to do. All right, folks. So I hope that was helpful. I hope that was informative. I'm sure I left some things out. So if you have additional questions, leave them down in the comments below. Make sure you like, subscribe if you like content like this. And while guns and gear are great, what we're really about is training. So make sure you go to ParamountTactical.com. Go check out our upcoming training schedule. If you are serious about learning long range the right way, go check out our XP Long Range Academies that we're doing in conjunction and teamed up with Ray Helms from the X-Ring. It is the best long range training that you'll find anywhere in the country. I guarantee it. And for all your gear needs, make sure you go to ParamountTactical.com, where we only carry gear that we've personally tested and we believe in. And we're going to stand behind it. We're going to be there for your customer service. We're here to help you out. But until next time, stay armed, stay ready. We'll talk to you soon.